Denzel Boston is going to lead the Big Ten in receiving touchdowns.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's the site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As we are brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Lars, we got a really fun show for the everydayers. We're going to get into Oregon's pursuit of four-star tight end Vander Ploog. A lot going on there. Really interesting. We'll see how that goes. We got a question from Insider Jote about some yardage predictions over under for some UW stars that we're going to have a lot of fun with, because the theme of today's show is bold predictions, a Locked On Huskies tradition that we love for all our new everydayers. You'll see when we get to game of week, we love giving some bold predictions on this here program. And with that said, Lars, Denzel Boston is going to lead the Big Ten in touchdowns this season.
No, you're absolutely right, because it sounds crazy when you initially think about it. And then we ran through it before the show, and it's like, no, actually, that is very much in play, which does go for everydayers that are new here that weren't a part of us last season. Our bold predictions are actually not that far off, usually even on game week. So it's not a bad idea to consider Denzel in that category. And especially when you look at the offense that Washington's going to be playing in, it's tailor-made for somebody to pop off. And I think Denzel is the guy where he's seen Rome, he's seen Jalen, he's seen JP, and he's just dying to prove to everybody, hey, I could have been doing this last year. I could have been doing this, maybe not to the level 2 years ago, but I think absolutely Denzel is going to be one of, if not the best receivers in the Big Ten. So that's a perfect bold prediction.
Some fun facts here for the everydayers. In the Big Ten last season, there were two players that had more than 10 receiving touchdowns. It's Roman Wilson at Michigan and Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State. Those guys are gone. There are some talented receivers in this conference. But when you look at Jedd Fisch's offense at Arizona last year, yeah, it's pretty spread out, but they also had last season had two guys with over 10 touchdowns. Jacob Cowing had 13 to Tyrone McMillan had 10. So it's very, very feasible. It's crazy to think about that. Jacob Cowing would have been second in the Big Ten in receiving touchdowns, especially when you just look at some of the numbers in the Pac-12. But yeah, it's certainly going to be a little different. But with Denzel's ability to just go up and get the ball in the end zone, it was, as we've seen from him time and time again, just in terms of practice, where they love throwing in that fade ball, and with his frame, his leaping ability, he's going to make some spectacular plays in the end zone this season. I can't wait to watch it. Lars, what's yours?
I was going to say, perfect segue off of that. Denzel goes to get the ball. The guy who's going to lead the Big Ten in tackles this season is the guy who goes and chases down every ball carrier, and that's Washington linebacker Carson Bruner. Because when we've talked ad nauseum about Carson, and I think the perfect comp for him is a bigger, faster, stronger, and this is no slight to Ben Burke-Irvin, but just a better Ben Burke-Irvin. Taller, a little bit bigger. And I think that's why Carson is going to be like the perfect Big Ten linebacker. If you just close your eyes and envision a Big Ten linebacker, and then you open your eyes and Carson Bruner is standing in front of you, it's like, yeah, it's exactly what I want. Yep. It's exactly what I need. Cover, blitz, run, everything Carson can do, silent to silent. He's going to be the captain to set up the defense. One of the captains, I'm sure. Again, not just the only captain, but he's got the defensive play, the thing in his helmet. So he's going to be calling out the defensive plays from Steve Belichick. And that's why, for me, we look at Carson last year, didn't lead the team in tackles because I think it was Dom Hampton was up there, right?
You're correct, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Dom was first, and Eddie Ulofoshio was second.
And that's the only reason Carson wouldn't be the returning leading tackler on this team, is because he played behind Eddie, who, again, I think that was honestly good for Carson's development, because we've seen what he can do on special teams. And now it's just kind of the Denzel of the defense, where even though he's a senior, now this is your year to put it all together and show everybody what you can do. And I think Carson's going to really raise his stock. And everybody already kind of knows about Carson. He's the one guy that everybody seems to know about. But I still don't think he gets the level of respect that he's going to have by the end of the season, leading the Big Ten in tackles.
So I'm with you there. I really like that one a lot. I want to get into my second one here. The team leader in sacks will be defensive lineman Deshawn Lynch. And I'm really excited about this guy. I know, the everydayers know that he's been one of my agenda guys for the last couple of months now. And the more I watch him, the more excited I get. Where we've seen him line up everywhere in the formation along the defensive line, from nose tackle to technically an outside linebacker in the stand-up 9, literally everywhere. And watching this dude play, he's quick. He's got long arms that he can use against guards and gets into the backfield really quickly. But with his 290-pound frame on the outside, he's also able to speed rush, not only speed rush, but bull rush tackles really well. And the more I watch him, the more I just say, yeah, there are a lot of really talented edge guys on this team. And we've talked about it before. We think that there can be 3 guys with 5+ sacks. And Zach Durfee certainly feels like he'll be one of them. If it's Sebastian Valdez, if it's Lance Holtzclaw, if it's Voit Tanufi, we're not going to be shocked. But the more I watch Deshawn Lynch, the more I feel that this guy is going to be a versatile piece that Steve Belichick is going to use really, really well.
And the fact that I know you mentioned it a little bit, not that you glossed over it, but I just can't get that play out of my head that we both saw where Deshawn Lynch is chasing down. I forgot who it was, but he was running. I was gonna say, because I was like, I forgot if it was Mohammed or Damon, but he was chasing him down and he moved like a 220 linebacker. Yeah, and I was like, oh, Lance Holtzclaw is going to. That's not Lance. That's Deshawn Lynch.
Lance changed his number.
No, exactly, and that's actually exactly, and that was the thing, is it was like, it looks like Lance and is built like Deshawn, and that is the perfect combination. Which is also why, in a segue to my second pick, why I think the perfect guy to lead the team in interceptions is the guy not on the far outside, but the guy that really has seemed to benefit the most from everything about the defense, and that's Jordan Shaw. Can line up anywhere on the defense. He's going to play, obviously, the nickel, but he just has a knack for the ball. And I remember talking with him before the season at the preseason media event. He's like, I don't like to really talk a lot. I just like to let my game do the thing. I used to be a receiver. And I'm like, now it tracks. Because when you see how he reads quarterbacks incredibly well. It reminds me, again, has a little bit still to grow, but the Elijah Molden angle of Elijah was so football savvy, knew where the ball was going to go, so he knew the route to take and the angle to take to get to it. That's why Jordan Shaw is going to dominate this season. I would not be surprised if he has half dozen interceptions, maybe? Sure. Like, I know it sounds high, and I know he only played 4 games at Indiana as a redshirt freshman, but the coaching of John Richardson, the scheme of Steve Belichick, and what we saw from Jordan Shaw in fall camp, how many picks he had at least 4 or 5 picks in fall camp alone. Yeah. In terms of 11s, not even 7s. So to me, that tells me, again, as long as he's going to get those opportunities, I would not be surprised if he has at least a half dozen interceptions.
Yeah, the ball just finds him. It's a fun thing about him is the ball just finds him. So I got a third and final one here. I don't think we need to spend too long on it because we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about the defense here. I know you got another fun one that you want to get to too. This defense is going to be top 20 nationally in yards per game allowed. I think that this scheme is going to confuse a lot of offensive coordinators. I think it's going to be the perfect blend of talent and scheme and execution and just everything that you want to see, because this is a really, really good defensive coaching staff and all led by Steve Belichick. And the more I watch it, the more I say, I don't think a lot of teams in the Big Ten are going to be prepared for what Washington is going to throw at them. And Lars, you got one more here, it's a fun one as well.
And it's a perfect segue off of that. The one person that Big Ten teams and fans probably don't know a ton about, and I'm sure Scotty Graham says, I guarantee they don't know about him, but he knows about him, and that's Adam Mohammed. Adam Mohammed will play all 12 games, at least, if not 13 for Washington. He is lining up perfectly to be what Jonah Coleman was when he came into Arizona as a freshman and played every single game as a freshman. And Scotty Graham was like, hey, that's that guy. And you see it. When they stand next to each other, it's like you see what type of guy Scotty Graham wants. And so I would, zero surprise, almost a lockdown lock that Adam Mohammed will play every single game this year.
Beautiful. I love that. And speaking of Jonah Coleman, we got some questions about him as well, which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Ultimate College Football HC. Hey, Lockdown Huskies fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Huskies? I think that'd be so much fun. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. hands? Will we be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the game, just like Jedd Fisch. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Huskies fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off the ground real fast and get them off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Lars, we were talking with Insider Joe the other day over on our fantastic Locked On Huskies Insider program, which all the everydayers need to check out. Down in the link in the description below there. Get a free 2-week trial, and after that, it's $4.99 a month. And he asked us a really great question about some UW stars. He, as you love, asked us for some over-unders on a few big-time Huskies. We got 3 here. It's over under 3,200 yards passing, which was 25th in 2023. That could be Will Rogers, Diont Williams, a combination of both. Over under 1,100 rushing yards for Jonah Coleman, and over under 1,000 receiving yards for Jeremiah Hunter. Let's go from the top down here. Let's start with the passing yards. Over under 3,200.
Over. I'd probably say Will be somewhere in that 35 to 36 range. Sure. I wouldn't be. I don't. For people asking, I do not think Will Rogers is going to get the 4,000 yards because of the running game. That's not because Will Rogers can't. I just think you want to have enough balanced offense. But no doubt, with a quarterback like Will Rogers, 35 is probably where I put the over under.
Yeah, I'm with you. I certainly want to take the over there, especially when we just think about Will's experience and you just look at some of the passing offenses that Arizona had. They had 3,800 yards passing in 2023. And then in 2024, they got over 4,000, where I don't think the offensive line is going to be able to sustain at the 4,000 yard passer, but 3,200 certainly seems fair from the way this offense wants to run. It's going to be pretty balanced. So I'm certainly in the camp of over. Lars, I got a surprise one here for you that I just want to throw in here. Over under 400 passing yards for Diont Williams.
Under, because he's going to run when he gets in. So, I wouldn't, I would probably put it between 200 and 300, maybe 350.
Okay. Then what would you set the rushing yards at? Let's just keep going there for a sec. I
could see, because again, it depends on how many games Diont plays, but if he plays, let's say 6 games, 5 games, I could see 150, 200 rushing yards. It won't be more than passing, but because of the dual threat ability with Diont, he's not going to just air it out like Will. I'm going to just stay on the hot take train here. I think he'll have more rushing yards than passing yards this year from something that we asked him after, the mock game last week. And he said, now why am I going to tell you that when asked about, certain packages for Diont Williams? I think we're going to see him. I think we're going to see those read option packages. I know this is a take you've had. I just wanted to expand on it and have a little fun with it. So let's jump over to Jonah Coleman here, because I feel like this is, of these 3 guys that Insider Joe asked us about, this is the toughest one. Over under 1,100 rushing yards. I'll let you go first here. Jonah Coleman is a 1,000-yard back who will get under 1,100 yards this season because of, again, the same reason at Arizona, which I'm sure you can expand on as well. When you look at the room that he was in last season, he had about 871 at Arizona and 5 touchdowns on 130 some odd carries because he was playing with 2 seniors. Now, he still got more carries than both those seniors, but when you think about the offense that Jedd Fisch is running, and then you look at the Washington running back room, as I mentioned, with Adam Mohammed and Cam Davis, plus Sam Adams, plus even Jordan Washington, you can just throw down whoever you want in that mix. That just tells me Jonah is going to be, and I told you this before the show, he could have 7-8 yards per carry, but not have 1,100 yards, maybe 1,000 yards this season. And I think the yards per carry matters more than the total yards, especially when it comes to the impact Jonah's going to make.
So I agree that he's going to go under, and I have a couple different reasons why. The number one is, as you said, there's going to be a rotation. You talked about Adam Mohammed, who you believe is going to play in every game, and I agree with you there. I think he can do that too. And Cameron Davis as well. You can't forget about him. That's going to be the top 3 guys. But on top of that, Jonah's value as a pass catcher should not be understated. I feel, when we've seen him at practice, that there are a lot of just swing routes, just getting him out in the flat, getting the ball in his hands and getting him in space. He pulled in 30 something catches at Arizona last year and was very, very productive with them as well. Where I think that's, I don't want to say it's an underrated part of his game, but it's a very important part of his game. So he might have, because it's 137 carries last year at Arizona, he's going to have a similar number to that. I want to say, because Cameron Davis is high as 108, and that came in 2022, obviously, but it's going to be somewhat split between them, just in terms of when you look at Arizona, you look at what Cam Davis is able to handle when he's healthy, you mix in Adam Mohammed there. So between those three guys, they're going to carry, I think, 85% of, maybe even more, of Washington's, ground game by the end of the year. But the more I look at Jonah, the more I think keeping him healthy and keeping him in a healthy rotation is going to be the most important thing to make sure he's effective, but it's going to make everyone else in that room more effective as well.
Exactly. And that's why, and I think even Jonah would tell you this, he's not a stats guy. Obviously, again, wants to get his yardage, wants to go to the NFL, wants to better his family, as I wrote on Athlon Sports yesterday. But he's a very great teammate. He's a humble kid. He knows. Ask about Adam Mohammed. Ask about anybody else in the room. He's like, give that guy the ball. I'm down to come out for him. It's cool. And I think that's what's going to be important, is everybody has a role in that room. And that's why Scotty Graham is such a good running backs coach. He's not just going to say, oh, Jonah's my guy, I'm going to give him 200 carries, 250 carries. We're going to ride Jonah. It's like, why? Why would you do that? There's no reason to.
Jeremiah Hunter, over under 1,000 receiving yards.
I have still, as we've been recording, going back and forth on this, because I want to say over. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I'm going to take the over, and I'll make the argument for the over, because I can see the argument for the under. Talent-wise, just like Jonah, absolutely 1,000-yard receiver.
Yes.
I think if certain players weren't on this team and things were a little bit different, it's almost a lock that he would have 1,000 yards. I just think he might lead the team in touchdowns and not yards. And he might, just like last season at Cal, he had 980, 950 and a handful of touchdowns. That, to me, that's why I think he's going to go over, because if he can get 900 at Cal, I couldn't tell you who Cal's quarterback was last year. That to me tells me if he's got them. That's my point. It's like, if he can get 900 at Cal last year with that, he's got Will Rogers. Now, the reason, again, I can see the other side is because of everybody else we've talked about.
Yes, and that's where I'm going with this, because I've drew a lot of numbers here. I wanted to draw as many comparisons to 2022 Arizona as I possibly could here, because 2023, all the guys are in place. The offensive line is better, where there were still, some questions in 2022. And let's go through the list here. Dorian Singer that year, 66 catches for 1,105 yards and 6 touchdowns. Jacob Cowing, 85 catches for 1,034 yards and 7 touchdowns. Tatiro McMillan had 39 catches for 702 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think that then Denzel is going to be the leading receiver. I can see that, but here's where I think it gets bold. I think Giles Jackson and Jeremiah Hunter both go over 700 yards. And that's why I wanted to draw these comps 2022 Arizona, where having that third guy into Tyrone McMillan at that time, because he was still a true freshman, makes this a little bit more complicated, where I think that just the way that they want to use Giles is going to affect Jeremiah's bottom line more than it will Denzel's, where Denzel is going to be the guy where we know how they're going to use him. We saw how they used Tyrone McMillan last season. That's where I think the similarities are going to come in. I don't think he's, because Tyrone is just an unbelievable all-world sort of player. I think Denzel has a similar ceiling, but that's a different discussion for a different day. And then when I just look at the rest of this, just these numbers here, Giles is going to eat up a lot of those targets, where we talked about it being a career year for him. And you look at these numbers for Cowing, where, you know what, I'm going to say it now, where I think that there's a chance where Giles has more receptions than Jeremiah, where Jeremiah is going to have more yards. Jeremiah's going to have more yards, but just the way that they want to use him, where it's going to be in that Jacob Cowing role of getting him in space and getting the ball in his hands, is a possibility. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen, but it's a possibility that you can't rule out with this team, where that was one of the biggest threats about Arizona. And when you look at that film, it's the way that there's always a way to create space for those guys, especially those undersized guys, where you stack them with somebody like Jeremiah, and all of a sudden, they're the ones who are running down the field, and they've got a whole bunch of space around them, which I think is something you can't necessarily discount in this offense. And Lars, we love our bold predictions here, but we also got to spend some time on the recruiting trail, because we got to give a shout out to our good friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has an awesome new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is always beneficial. I've been to so many fun baseball games this year. Like, I remember watching the Red Sox come back from being down 6-2 in the 8th inning against the Blue Jays. Getting those tickets on Game Time was awesome, getting the best possible deal, and it just turned into a super memory, because that's just what Game Time does. Where some of the awesome things about Game Time are things like Game Time Picks, where the curation makes it so much easier to save even more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They got their all-in pricing where you can toggle this feature. It shows your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and with their seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You can take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, MLB tickets, whatever tickets you want with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Lars, the rumor mill is abuzz. Oregon offered 4-star Washington commit Vander Ploog, who is one of the top 5 commits in Washington's 2025 class. And, On3 says there's something brewing, that the two have been talking for a while, that there's interest. Vander Ploog, not too long after tweeting out the offer, tweets out, the purple rain umbrella emojis. I certainly still think Washington is going to get Vander Ploog and is going to get him to sign, but you can understand the worry from a lot of Husky fans right now.
So I can make you worry more, or I can take away the worry. Which one do you want?
Let's talk about both. We got to talk about both. That's why we're
I was going to, because which one do you want to do? Because when I talked to Vander, talked to him for about 30 minutes after he committed a couple of months ago, there's 2 reasons to think he could go to Oregon or have significant interest in Oregon. And there's a couple of reasons why, and more reasons I think why he'll stay with Washington. The reasons why he'll consider Oregon is because he already has considered Oregon. He visited Oregon for an unofficial visit back in the spring before he made his commitment to Washington. And he did honestly have interest in the Ducks, but even if they had offered earlier, it just didn't necessarily seem like there was a connection as deep as Washington's is, which is why I think in the end, Washington will be able to maintain that commitment. But there's a unique tie-in with Spencer Webb, where former Oregon Duck tight end, where when Vander Ploog was a freshman at Troy down in California, Spencer convinced him not only to stay because he wanted to quit football. Vander Ploog was considering quitting football just because just wasn't feeling it. And Spencer said, you know what, why not try tight end? You have his body, and he was only like 6'2", whatever. He hadn't even grown into the size he's at now, which is a perfect tight end. But in that role, I could see Oregon in a way not playing off of that, but just like, hey, you know what, this guy kept me into football. Maybe I go continue that tradition there. But Vander's his own person. I think it's a cool story. Obviously, I appreciated that he told me the story. I don't think it'll matter, but I just think like there's enough of a relationship there where you should be concerned as a Huskies fan, but I wouldn't be overly concerned because of the relationship he has with Jordan Paopao, the role of the tight end in the Washington offense, and especially when you pair him with Bernoane. I think that's the selling point is, hey, Vander, you're going to be this guy. You're going to go off in this offense. You're going to play as a freshman. Because look at the position group. Washington's going to play both those guys every single game. There's not really a reason. And that's with Decker to grab. Like, that includes Decker. Like,
yes, exactly.
They will all play. So that's not to take away from Decker. That's more or less to say this is clearly why Washington's taking 2 4-star tight ends, and they equally want them both. So to me, there's a little bit of concern, but I overly wouldn't be concerned about it.
So that was the route that I took because, obviously the Spencer Webb situation was tragic. And if he wants to continue the memory of his, of a good friend of his, that's of course, something people would understand. But when I look at the other side of it, I look at the football side of things. I see, Quentin Moore's leaving after this year. Kaleki Latu, I believe he has one more year, a redshirt year in terms of injury if he wants it. we'll see if, he ends up taking it. But you look at the room outside of that. It's Charlie Kroll, it's Ryan Otten, it's Decker DeGraff. And then there's the two freshmen coming in as well. That leaves a lot of potential for guys to play early. And what is one thing that, even if there was another upperclassman in the room, like let's say Kaleki Latu does come back. That doesn't mean Jedd Fisch doesn't, all of a sudden not love playing freshmen anymore. He wants to get those guys on the field early. And when we've made so many comparisons to, Arizona 2022, 2023 on the show, what's one more? That Tanner McLaughlin role is still something that they're looking for. And that was certainly a big selling point when you talk about Vander Ploog and you look at what he can do in terms of his high school film. You see, okay, yeah, that's a guy who he's not the blocker that Baron Naone is. He's not. And that's okay, because he could become that if he gets up to, 245, 250. I'm sure they'd ask him to do a little bit more of that, but he's a guy who can come in and be a reliable pass catcher for you from day one. And with all the turnover Washington's going to experience anyway, with Giles Jackson going out the door, with Jeremiah Hunter being out of eligibility as well, there's going to be some turnover there anyway. So getting as many young pass catchers that you can to build for the future, to build around DeMond and, Dash Beerley behind him and Tristan Keeney McMillan behind him, you want to have as many of those kinds of guys as you can. So we saw the late push that Washington was able to make with Andrew Marsh and really make him think there for a little while. It feels like this class is going to be able to hold on to Vander Ploog. And yeah, the relationships are a massive part of that as well.
And the other side of the coin that we've kind of touched on and discussed, they haven't played a game this year. Nobody knows with Jedd Fisch. Again, we've seen it in practice, obviously, but even practice, it could still look slightly different in a game. And so I think once, and to your point about Andrew Marsh, same sort of thing. Once Andrew Marsh sees that UW-Michigan game, and I know we made our predictions yesterday, but let's just say Washington surprises everybody. Even more to the reason why Vander would stay and other guys would consider. So having these relationships is the key to sealing these things, to keeping them in the fold. And then that the other side of the piece, in the on-field side, when guys see Jedd Fisch's offense at Washington, I'm sure it may be slightly different because when he was at Arizona, slightly different than what he was doing at UCLA. And Jedd seems to be a guy that knows how to kind of add a couple of pieces to the offense in terms of wrinkles and stuff. He's a fantastic X's and O's coach. I think
yes,
that offense, he knows how to scheme an offense open. Let's give we give the guy credit every time, but people need to give Jedd Fisch the more credit because the guy knows how to scheme an offense open. The combination of relationships, the effort that they put in, and the on-field product, I think, will be why most of these guys, if not all of them, end up sticking. And who knows, they could actually end up adding a few guys because of both of those because of both those factors.
So I'm with you, and that's, we'll get more into the 2025 class in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, whenever, their guys visiting and anything like that. And just a heads up on that as well, our Locked On Huskies insiders get first dibs of that as well. So once again, click that link down in the description, sign up for a 2-week free trial. We really hope you enjoy it. There's so many fun features, talking with us one-on-one. We're giving you heads ups after games, practices, everything like that. Anything we're hearing, rumors, you can ask us questions, ask us to exclusive Q&As. That's all down in the description below. Make sure you check that out. But that's a big reason why is you think about just the way I have to bring it back to the Andrew Marsh thing where, yeah, Washington finished second, but these relationships might win out with some of these guys that, just like it's going to be with Oregon and Vander Ploog now until signing day, there's going to be some of these battles and this relationship, what they can do on the field, combining those two things makes this a really, really promising Washington team. And I don't want to say hate, but some of the national media members have been pretty down on Washington over the last couple of days when you kind of look at CBS calling them one of the most overrated teams when they're losing 20 starters. I don't think those two things go together. I had to make sure I got that out there at some point. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But the more I look at this, the more I say there is a lot to like about Washington on the recruiting trail. And yes, Oregon, especially with, the rivalry and everything else, what they're doing on the recruiting trail, Washington fans have every right to be concerned about this. But at the end of the day, what Washington is doing, I think, is going to win out here.
Absolutely. And I think, what Vander told me, like he has a solid relationship with the Oregon coaches, but I don't think it's anything near where Jordan Paopao is built up. And even the fact that you have to offer after Washington, now you're playing catch up if you're Oregon. So everything you're doing is trying to overcompensate, which actually is kind of on brand if you think about it. But in that respect, tell me I'm wrong. In that respect,
you're not.
And you combine that with the on-field product and the success Jordan Papa has had with building tight ends and developing tight ends. How many Will Dissly, Drew Sample, Tanner McLaughlin, the list goes on and on. That, if you're Vander, there's only a handful of schools that you would go to that would offer, and I don't think it's Oregon. It's just me.
Yep. Lars, with that being said, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all the everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And thank you so much for making Locked On Huskies your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast from NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors. Our guy, Spencer McLaughlin, gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And since it's officially football season, you got to make sure you subscribe to Locked On Huskies as well, because we got so much fun stuff coming for you throughout the season, because it's officially game week starting Monday. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And please leave us a 5-star review for your audio only, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.